Hello there, and I hope you are in the mood for some talk about syntax. Last week, we talked about compound sentences, and I wanted to continue the conversation with more types of syntax like passive voice and relative clauses before you hit pause because you're like, well, I work with kindergartners or I work with second grade. This is still a relevant thing to target with our students. There was a study by Owens et al. In 2024. They reviewed conversational language samples for 196 children ages 5 to 10 years, 11 months. They found that 5-year-olds are using an average of 1.25 subordinate clauses and 2.05 coordinate clauses. So even 5-year-olds are using complex syntax, and the number continues to increase with age. So if we are seeing our students only use simple sentences, that is a sign that they may need support with syntax, and we might want to look into it a little bit further. It's easy to hear if they're using simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and all types of clauses. If we're not seeing this in their communication, they may be struggling to comprehend that complex syntax as well. And that is an absolutely age-appropriate skill for our school-age students. Approximately half of 5-year-olds are able to comprehend reversible passive sentences, and that's from Owens 2016. And 90% of children between the ages of 7.5 and 8 are able to comprehend reversible passives. So very early on in the school age years, this is something that's typical and something that we might want to support if our students are struggling with it. So hopefully you're still intrigued. I am going to be sharing strategies that we can use in our assessment and intervention when targeting these types of goals. The first strategy, and this has been a common theme, but we want to start with a thorough assessment. Collect language samples and consider multiple contexts because we use different types of syntax when generating narratives, retelling narratives, describing a picture, summarizing a text, explaining how to do something, trying to persuade someone. So all of those types of samples will elicit different syntax. We want to consider different language samples. We will also want to observe in the classroom because the language that we're hearing in the classroom will be a little bit different. We can look at work samples and look at their writing, and we can also collect parent and teacher report. And then we can also do a more structured assessment of the comprehension and production of syntax. In terms of actual treatment strategies, I'm pulling a lot of these from the Zippoli 2017. I'll share the citation in the show notes. Lessons should begin with clear explanations of the target sentence structure and give the purpose of the lesson. So we can model comprehension and production of sentence structures. We'll want to use clear, concise, and consistent language as we're doing that. When we're providing demonstrations, we'll give multiple examples and use visual and auditory cues to make the syntactic features more explicit. There's a lot we can do to support the teaching of that. One strategy is focus stimulation. This is one that applies to all grammar goals and that I have found to be incredibly impactful. This is a little bit more implicit, but this is when we provide frequent models and recasts in a variety of activities. So when we're modeling the passive voice or a relative clause, we highlight that naturally in conversation. When we recast, we might correct what the child says or modify it. If they produce a simple sentence in our literacy-based therapy activity, I can recast the student sentence and add in that relative clause. Using those models and recasts is what they call focused stimulation in the research, and we can incorporate that in all of our therapy activities. That is a great way to implicitly target some of these skills. Other strategies that we might use for passive voice are using directed questions to enhance and scaffold comprehension. So if we have a sentence like Diego was found by Rebecca, we can say who was found and who did the finding and ask some questions about that statement. And we can use pictorial support as well in asking students to draw pictures to represent those sentences. The example I gave was with the passive voice, but we can also do this with the active voice. So instead of Diego was found by Rebecca, we can do Diego found Rebecca. And in SLP Now, we have syntax activities attached to the majority of our literacy-based units. We embed these strategies in the activities for passive voice, for example. So we have a sentence with pictures and visual choices to help the students. We have pictorial support as well, and we give you statements and questions so that you have support as you're implementing these types of strategies. For adverbial clauses, which is another type of syntax we might want to target, we can use sentence starters. This is an effective technique for helping students understand and write more elaborate sentences. If we give them a starter, they can fill in the sentence and create more. We also have picture sequencing. If we have pictures of the different items, for example, before I take the test, I will study. You can have an icon representing studying and taking the test, and you can do that practice using those adverbial clauses. In SLP Now, we have icon cards for the conjunctions that you would use with the sentence starters. We also have pictures to practice and support that understanding. We give you tools for sentence starters and picture sequencing. In terms of relative clauses, 2 more evidence-backed strategies are to use sentence combining, which we talked about last week. This is where we're combining 2 or more simple sentences. You can use simple sentences from whatever book or article you're reading, and then use our conjunction cards to help students combine those. The other strategy we talked about last week is sentence decomposition, where you take a complex sentence and break it down into simpler sentences. All you need is the book or article you're reading and identifying those simple, complex, and compound sentences. That is a quick blitz of some strategies we can use for our syntax goals. Check out the show notes for references and more detail about the resources if you want help implementing this. I hope that this was a helpful review for you, and we'll see you in the next one.